Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Career Transitions podcast that we are producing through Learn Academy. And I wanted to introduce you to my next guest, Elijah Barreto, who was a part of the Echo 2022 cohort. So we have a lot to talk about. And just before this conversation, he and I were discussing the other things we do, of which I got really interested because it involves endurance sports, which I would not consider myself an athlete, kind of even to this day. But anytime I meet somebody that's like, oh, yeah, I run for fun, I'm like, what? Let's talk. So, anyway, so we've got a lot to talk about. But today, I mostly wanted to focus on Elijah's journey, specifically what he came from before he came into tech, what he discovered about himself as he was going through that journey into tech, and looking back a year since the program, like what are some of the things that he's reflected on and thought about, and maybe something for you to consider as you're also considering moving into tech or going through a program, whether it's through Learn or otherwise. So, Elijah, hello, and thank you for joining me today.
Hello, Adam. Thanks for having me today.
So, I actually wanted to start with from the horse's mouth. What is your origin story into tech? Like, take us back in time. What's something that we have to know about the before times, the before tech times, that's going to help inform what motivated you into tech?
Oh, great. So let's see, how far back do you want to go? So I was in the Navy. That's what brought me basically to San Diego. Married my wife and my high school sweetheart. And in the Navy, I was a CWIS control tech, so worked on the like missile defense system for the Navy. So I got to a little bit of exposure to troubleshooting and maintenance and stuff like that. After the Navy, I didn't know what to do, and I just got into like sales and calling people on the phone. Eventually landed a job as a debt collector and did that for about 10 years and did pretty good. Maxed out my 401k while I was working there and was able to save enough money to buy a house with my wife during the recession when all the housing prices hit the bottom. We were able to go in and finally buy our first house. And so I became a stay-at-home dad. And while being a stay-at-home dad, I got into ultra marathons, trail running, and just finding things to keep fit and stay healthy. And eventually, talking to one of my neighbors, he was like, "You should try coding. You know, you seem like you would have the mindset for that. You know, it's the same as running. You're going to be basically putting in your reps, you know, every week and getting better and better at it." So I started trying to learn some of that code on my own, and did all the free online courses, Udemy, free code camp. I mean, you name it. I was trying to do the 100 days of code challenge, you know, trying to do whatever I could to get my name out there and learn and just try to find things to do. So I think what got me into tech mostly was just I was looking for a new career, a new job, something better than calling people every day on the phone. It just that got old for a long time. Even training other people to do the job was kind of exhausting at the end of my career because it's so repetitive and there's no challenge at the end of the day like you find in coding. There's so many like ways you can challenge yourself. And talking to my neighbor about Python, that's when the light was like, I gotta try this out. Like Python and AI learning to me was just like, that is insane. I've been using this for a long time. I've been using Netflix, I've been using YouTube. I didn't know that there was this pattern learning scheme behind the whole scenes, you know, like choosing which movie I want to watch or which friend I'm going to see on my feed. So that really interested me, and I started diving really deep into Python. And it was a long time of like just struggling on my own. Finally, one of my neighbors, she joined coding boot camp as well, and that showed me like she did great through the boot camp, and she was like successful. And I just kept asking her questions like, should I join a boot camp or should I keep learning on my own? And she's like, try whatever works for you, you know. And I was learning on my own until finally I decided to join a coding boot camp and go that whole route. Now being a year out, I've learned like so much. It's insane how much can you can learn within a short amount of time when you really like apply yourself for like 40 hours a week. So
Yeah,
that's
it's interesting when you
basically
put
my
in all
story.
those reps where you land. Yeah, I'm curious about your kind of that impetus for change? I mean, it sounds like I'll be very frank. The idea of being a debt collector sounds very not sexy or exciting in any way. So I guess we'll start here. Was that a career path choice in the first place, or is that just kind of where you landed for other reasons? Like what was motivating you to go down the debt collector route in the first place?
Just it was opportunity. I shouldn't have even had that job. I was at a sales job where you call someone and you tell them you've won a sweet like a first prize or something, and you kind of like con them into going to a place where they sell them a timeshare or something like that. And I heard another
Hmm.
guy in the elevator talking about a place where you do a different job where you call people and you make commission off of, the amount of money they pay on their bills. And that sounded more fun. So I left that company and just started doing debt collections. And once I got into that job, I got into debt collections when it was like the wild, wild west of debt collections. It wasn't as many laws. So I heard things and saw things that were like, I couldn't believe it. I was like trying to be a good debt collector, not like some of the other people that were working around me and doing things that were like, it was intense. They made a lot of laws since then and changed it. But yeah, it wasn't sexy, but it paid the bills. And there was like a
Sure.
lot of opportunity if you can just, push through the noise. So I found that I was very successful at it and got promoted right away. And so, like I said, I was able to max out my 401k, and I never had a problem paying the bills. And I was going to college at the time, trying to take classes and learning, thinking like this isn't a career, right? But I made it into a career. I never thought like debt collections would make me the amount of money that I could make. But yeah, if you apply yourself to anything, right, you can make it successful.
So I want to go back to your time in the military. Were you in the Navy? Was that right?
I was in the Navy, correct?
Yeah. And so in the Navy, how long were you enlisted?
I was only enlisted 3 years. Yeah, I got out a little bit
Okay.
early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm just curious, how, if at all, did your time in the Navy inform your choices professionally? Did it, or was it more like it was kind of a stop in your journey, and when you got out of the Navy, you just sort of continued on the pursuits that you had prior to it? Did anything change while you were in the Navy in terms of your professional desires or pursuits?
I mean, I feel like I gained a lot of confidence from the Navy, and it was similar to the boot camp experience where you learn a lot in a short amount of time. I learned about electronics and solid state and all these concepts that were like way above my knowledge level. And just having that confidence, I was able to, while I was working a full-time job, try to go to school full-time and work. I actually worked two jobs while I was doing a debt collector. I worked as a server as well because I just figured I needed more money to pay for school. So I took classes like chemistry, and I felt confident going into that, knowing that like if I could do a short course, I could do a longer course. And so yeah, the Navy was great. It was like a brotherhood, and I did well in the Navy. I would have done great if I stayed in, but I just felt like there was bigger things ahead for me, and I didn't know what it was. I just knew that it wasn't the Navy.
Hmm. Yeah. So
It
what
wasn't a
is, I know you
lifer
said
like
that you
some of my
weren't
friends.
sure. I'm curious, like, what did bigger look like for you?
I think more income and more opportunity because, like in the Navy, a lot of the opportunities they weren't like income based. It was more like you're going to be like, for instance, I worked really hard to get stationed in San Diego, and like I had to be top of the class to even get choices for the orders. So, and asking for vacation and things like that, freedom basically. Yeah, I forgot about that. So, anytime you'd want to take a vacation or do this and that, you'd have to put in a leave of absence, and so I kind of wanted to experience more of the civilian life instead of the military role. Like it was fun in the Navy, but I just felt like I wasn't learning anymore. And it became like a monotonous job kind of.
Hmm. So, what were you doing for your mental health through all of this time? I know you talked about, you getting into trail running and ultra marathoning and triathlon, and was that a part of kind of your own way to sort of maintain your own mental health, or was it more a pursuit of, deep interest, or did you have background in that? Like, give me an idea of like what your ultra marathoning and endurance sport time. has done for you overall.
Oh my God, huge, huge mental health boost. I started like dabbling in the marathon while I was a debt collector, just to like on my off time and hitting trails, and sitting in a desk for so many hours is brutal. You know, it just messes your back up, and going outside and doing physical activity was just a relief, you know, and you don't think about things out there. You just move and you're just trying to get through nature. So yeah, eventually I saw the triathlon and I thought that looks hard and scary. And that's kind of how I pick a lot of my goals is like, if it's scary, I think I might try to do it. And yeah, triathlon seemed like impossible to run, swim, and bike. You know, I started swimming at the pool, taking classes in the master's class, trying to learn how to improve your stroke and all these things. And I had the whole routine going until my brother-in-law was like, "Have you heard of this thing called trail running and ultramarathon? There's like you can run, you know, all day and just be out in nature." And I was like, "Hell no, no way!" Like, pass. He sent me a book though, and it was a book that kind of outlined the plan, just the basic plan, how to do it, and it had everything, like whatever issue you might think of that you'd run into, the book covered it. And I read the book and I was like, this is something I could actually do. It's similar to marathon training. You do more like volume, but it's the same concept. You know, you're putting in your reps week by week, little by little. You know, you're 50 miles a week, 60 miles a week. You know, I didn't get past that. A lot of people do like 100 miles a week, but that has really boosted my mental stability. I just feel better. I feel proud of myself when I train and I show up to a race and you're like, I'm ready to go. Like I know I can. There's no doubt you're going to finish that race. You know, if there's an injury or whatever, but you know you can run 100 miles or whatever you've been training for. So that is just it helps me out in everything I do because, you know, marathon training and ultra marathon can take like 6 months to a year. So it's not a kind of a thing where you're a one and done. You're in it for a while. And I always wondered why people keep doing these events. Like you did 100 mile, like why are you doing another one? I look at someone's ultra sign up and they have like 6 or 7 100 mile finishes, and I couldn't understand until I got into the sport. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Like you run 100 miles and then you kind of want to do it again and see if you can do better or see what you can improve, or you know, it's the whole experience. It's about the journey, you know.
Yeah, it's about the journey. There's no doubt about it. So let's talk about the next phase in your journey into tech. What was the motivator or the catalyst for that? The change of pursuit.
Partly the pandemic, a little bit of the pandemic. I was already learning before that, but that was like, man, that really, I mean, I had to spend a lot of time at home with the kids, and I just knew that when that time was over, I was ready to do something. Like I needed to get out there. I was tired of being like alone, you know, like everybody, right? And I needed something scary and challenging. And signing up for something like a coding boot camp and having to finance that was scary. So I did it, and I never looked back. You know, it was a good experience for me. I think the impetus though was just knowing that I could do it and seeing that it was something that was going to be like rewarding when I finished it. I knew that I would have something, and I could carry that on, basically build upon it. Same as ultra marathons, and I think I think that's what really sparked the change in me. I wanted to do something for so long, and learning on my own just wasn't cutting it.
Yeah. It's a scary thing making a shift like that. And, if you're taking on debt or you're taking on that obligation, and you've talked about being a stay at home dad and having that obligation, it sounds like you had either stocked up some money or you had found your way financially to a place of stability. And so now you're able to make this change. Is that a fair kind of representation of that picture of where you were at? That you had the kids and some obligation, but you also had some funds stashed away that kind of allowed for this space, or were you taking even a bigger risk on that move?
Well, yeah, yes, yes, we did have the plan, but it's still like it didn't make me feel safe, even though, you know, we had the ability to do it. It's still scary, you know. I'm like, it felt
Hmm.
more scary than even like the 100 miles. Like I'm like, this is a lot, you know. 100-mile race only costs $300. This is like way more expensive than that, and there's no medal at the end. I'm just kidding, but no, I didn't know. I was scared. I was yeah. So and even during the process, after the process, I think even then the fear became even more real. Like, and I think that it kind of still drives me, that fear, like, was it worth it, you know? And I'm gonna make it worth it. So that's how I think in my life right now. Like, I did that, and I did that because it means something, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, the fear is a tough one for a whole lot of reasons because, what I've heard from a lot of students and even, going through somewhat of that journey, some of that same journey myself, but much earlier on in the early 2000s was it's a real change of identity piece that, you know, um, and what I've observed is especially those that have a military background is so much of that time is dedicated to identity and defining your identity or at least uncovering it for yourself. And then to go through this shift where you're maybe going from, one very clearly public or clear public identity into another type of identity and all of the stereotypes that come with that and all those just all of those pieces. So, my question to you is how much do you think of who you are stayed the same throughout this entire journey that you've been on professionally? What are kind of those core fundamental attributes that, whether you were a debt collector or in the Navy or, now going into tech, what has stayed the same?
Good question. So for me, I think what has stayed the same is I always choose things that are really difficult to accomplish. Like my goals maybe are too high, but I like that. So like some of the projects that I've chosen, like I failed on them, you know, and I'm comfortable with that because I feel like I learn a lot more when I push myself. and and same with my friends, you know. I'm kind of competitive, but I like to be competitive in the sense like we're going to do something great, you know, like we're going to beat the other team, but we're also going to push each other to make the best product. So I think that has stayed the same. You know, I love working with other people, so that has stayed the same too. And I think just being able to make opportunities when people don't see them, or make a solution, I guess, where other people don't see it, that has stayed the same because I've always been like that.
So let's talk about the advice you might give to somebody else who's planning to make a change. Looking back, what are the things that you feel like either you should have done more of or you're glad that you did to kind of prep for the decision to make a career change? What are some of the things that come to mind? And the opposite or the other side of that question is what are the things you thought were important that ultimately looking back weren't?
Okay, yeah, good one. So my advice to somebody thinking about doing it or contemplating is just do it, you know, just do it. If you're thinking about doing it, it may already be the right decision. And you don't know if it's the right decision or not, but you will definitely learn something from the experience. Um, I think I waited too long. Like I I should have just jumped on the opportunity when I first had the idea, when I was at my debt collections job messing with, you know, static web pages and making my own things. I should have done it back then. So I think that would be my biggest advice is don't let anything stop you from doing anything that you think you could do. You know, there's just so many good jobs in web development. I wish I would have looked into it a lot sooner. So yeah, other things that I think weren't as important now looking back is I was trying to learn too many different things at once. So I was trying to learn Python and JavaScript and everything at the same time when I could have probably just gone slower. And I was like, I felt like I was in a rush to learn all these things to say, I've done that, I've done this, I've done that, I've done that, when I could have just stuck to one stack, even if I was just front end and learn front end and then, you know, learn the full stack. So if you're contemplating going through that full stack process or whatever stack you're going through, I think just learn one step of that stack. I think would be the best advice, and get good at that because that will help you out a lot. I did a lot of studying and a lot of prep before the boot camp, and that helped me out a lot. But it was the new things that were challenging and fun that I enjoyed learning while I was in that process.
That's really helpful. I think some of that preparation worry is a big part of it. So, a common question that we would receive from folks, asking about going through the program is whether or not there's any prerequisites. Do you have to be good at math, or do you have to have done a CS program, or do you have to have done X, Y, or Z? Like, how much, if any, of that is true?
Hmm. I think that really helps. I've seen the people that are good at math tend to do just the problem solving really helps. So like if you can latch on to math, I would say do it, as high level of math as you can get. And that's kind of what I'm doing right now. I'm pushing my math, I'm going for calculus that I never finished in high school. But I don't think it's a requirement because there's so many other jobs in making anything on that you don't need to know just one thing. You don't need to be math minded. You could be more design oriented, for example, or you could know CSS. So I think whatever you're good at and you bring to the table, you can make it like into a job in web development. It's something I didn't know. I thought, okay, you have to be good at all these things. And no, you be good at whatever you're good at. If you're good at art and you have an eye for detail, you can bring that to the job. So that's one thing that really helped me is my attention to detail when coding. I could see real quick where the errors are, and so I think it's good to be good at math, but if you're not good at math, you might be good at just like talking to people or learning about a product or selling a product. So there's endless jobs. So yeah, I think just forget about all those fears and obstacles and give it a shot.
So, what are some of the skills that you learned through your prior career path that has helped you be a better software developer, do you think?
I think a little bit of sales, has helped me. When I was young, I did door-to-door sales, and I would sell things door to door, and that helped me a lot. Like right now, I'm able to find clients just by speaking to small business owners and asking them, "Hey, do you want a website built?" And I think just being able to communicate, and even though I don't like talking to people, I can make myself talk to people and go look for jobs. And I've tried direct networking with people on LinkedIn, and that was way more successful than just putting in a job application. So I think that just knowing that I can communicate with people and sell myself, because that's really what it's about now. It's like I know I can do the job, but I have to like show people that I can do the job. And that's another thing I'm trying to get better at is like doing media content, which I don't like doing, but I know it will definitely help me if I apply myself blogging and doing all those things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm always fascinated by those crossover skills. My background was as a stage actor, and the question I'd get quite often is, what from that time have you put to use in your time now? And there's some obvious things, but there's no denying that my time, having spent so many years in front of complete strangers doing performances, has made me incredibly comfortable in situations, either it be sales or meeting new people or giving a talk. There's no doubt that that has crossed over, and so I'm always fascinated by those similar, um, the other ways in which people have taken from other professions they've gone through and put it to use inside of their time in software development. And so, to you listening, I would encourage you to consider that as well, that the journey of a software developer is one that is very multifaceted, but also that some of the greatest value you could give and bring to the organizations you ultimately work for comes from experiences that are completely outside of software development and what you learned in whatever way you went through doing that. And speaking specifically of boot camps and trade schools, a set of statistics that I found were really fascinating was a study of the average age and professional experience of students showed that a majority of students were 29 and a half years old or older, and that they had already had 7 or more years of professional experience in areas unrelated to the trade that they were entering. And so because of that, they had a ton of crossover. And I always found that very fascinating. And I think it's one of the great assets that anybody can bring to the trade of software development, and that is prior experiences unrelated to software development. Well, with that, I'm going to bring this to a close. Elijah, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you sharing with us your journey, what brought you here to this moment and beyond. And to each of you listening, feel free to reach out if you have questions about how to make that transition from where you are to where you want to be. And just know, as Elijah said, consider sooner rather than later. Consider just taking the leap and going for it, because while it might be scary, it's definitely going to be worth it. So, Elijah, again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam.
All right.